Start any second. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now it's time to welcome our second speaker for today's seminar, Dr. Ingrid Westhoff from the University of Concepcion. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Westhoff will be talking about the urgent need to include SFL-based educational linguistics in teacher education, and she's going to focus on the reading to learn in the disciplines. Now, before I give her the floor, I need a couple of minutes to introduce her. So she is an English-Spanish translator at the Universidad of Concepcion. She holds a Master of Education in Linguistics at the University of Sydney. She's a graduate diploma in philosophy from the Universidad de Los Andes. She has worked as a lecturer in English for specific purposes, systemic functional linguistics, and reading and writing pedagogy at different universities. Now, she's the regional representative for Chile, Peru, and Bolivia at the Latin American Association of Systemic Functional Linguistics. She's also a board member of the Educar para Crecer Foundation and educational consultant. She has delivered SFL and art and reading to learn workshops at universities and institutions across America and Europe. Her work focuses on implementing the Australian literacy program Reading to Learn, promoting teacher action research, supporting educational volunteering and disadvantaged communities, and Reading to Learn regarding the world, how genre-based literacy pedagogy is democratizing education. That's a chapter published by Equinox. That's an impressive teaching and research interest, Dr. Ingrid Westhoff. So without further delay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Kila. Thank you very much. Very happy to be here. It is still dark here in Chiloé, Chile.
Sorry for making you up.
No. I'm more than happy to be here. So that's worthwhile.
Thank you. Thank you for kindly accepting our invitation.
Thank you. Well, today I'm going to talk about the important and urgent need to kind of recontextualize SFL knowledge, SFL educational, SFL theory into teacher education. I'm going to talk about a specific program, Reading to Learn, which is being recontextualized for teacher education. So, Halliday. Halliday is our greatest inspirator, and the linguistics, SFL linguistics is one of the theories behind Reading to Learn. And he has always said that linguistics cannot be other than an ideologically committed form of social action. And inspired in that, Martin, Rose, and many other people have recontextualized SFL into teacher education, because education is widely seen as the main driver of opportunity and a key tool to overcome inequality. So our Nobel Prize, Gabriela Mistral, Chilean Nobel Prize, was always concerned with teaching. A teacher who doesn't read must be a bad teacher. Education is just about teaching people to read and write, but about awakening their desire to learn and understand the world. So if we do not promote equality and cultural diversity within schools, where else can we expect to see them? So there is concern everywhere in the world that education is a empowering tool. And I'm going to give you a bit of a review of the context of recontextualizing SFL theory into genre-based pedagogy, into Reading to Learn. You may know some of this, but in the 80s, the writing project started in Australia, whose main object was to classify types of writing, primary and in the primary education, and what was the most important teaching methods being used: process and whole language, constructivism, a benevolent inertia, used to call that Michael Halliday. No, do not get involved. Let the kids discover what they have to learn. So we, in the 80s, also started developing this knowledge about language and the concept of genre, staged, goal-oriented social process. Language and together with language and social power, a new pedagogy was being born about teaching and learning cycle. In the 90s, the Write It Right project was focused more on secondary and writing in the disciplines. In the late 1990s, 2000, Reading to Learn was developed, focused on reading and writing in the disciplines. In all levels of education, has a functional perspective on reading, inclusive interactions, and explicit teaching. So, what do teachers say about what happens in the school? They recognize many, many inequalities in the early years. They complain that the home experiences are not different, that there are different paces of learning in the primary education, reading and writing classrooms. In secondary, teachers are recognizing inequalities throughout the education levels. And also, they recognize some difficulties with teaching. With teaching the curriculum subjects, the literacy skills, the text selection, lesson planning, programming, assessment, classroom management, knowledge about language. So it's a constant complaint in a way. We can see that in my country, and we wonder what is the cause, what is the problem, why teachers are saying that there are inequalities and that there are difficulties, that they have difficulties with teaching. Well, one of the key factors regarding reading is that it is a success or failure. Knowing how to read produces or brings out success or failure in a way. It's the tacit curriculum. It brings inequality. Because what is this tacit curriculum, reading curriculum? At home, mother and child share reading, with the main objective of learning to love reading, developing an emotional connection, while in year 1 to year 4, by learning sounds, letters, syllables, words in the context of different text types, kids are expected to learn to read comprehensively and independently. In between year 5 and year 8, by reading the thematic areas, students are expected to learn from reading. And from 9 to 12 years school, reading the specific subject curriculum content, students are expected to be independent learners across all subjects. So we can say that reading is a key factor in academic success or failure, because the importance throughout these different levels. Yeah. So one specific situation. What is the curriculum genres for beginning reading and writing? A balanced approach. This is what usually happens when teaching reading. Memorizing alphabet systems, memorizing phonics, memorizing sight words, share book reading, guided reading, silent reading. And regarding writing, letter formation, spelling, writing from personal experience. This is, in general terms, what happens in Chile, in my country. We used a balanced approach for beginning reading and writing, and it's not getting us anywhere because we are not progressing. Our reading levels in PISA or local evaluation systems are not showing advance. But we can say that these curriculum genres for reading and writing are just as old as Dionysius of Halicarnassus, as what he declared in the 1st century before Christ. Are we still teaching as others did in the distant past? The Lancaster method, repetition and structured drills. Halicarnassus described, talking about teaching, know the names of the letters, their shapes, their syllables. So we have been somehow teaching the same way that it has been taught for ages. We don't see meaning here. You see memorizing, lots of memorizing, share activities, and also activities that do not consider the text. They start from bottom up, the syllable up. So it takes ages to get to meaning, to get to the genres. So, as teachers, we should ask ourselves, what am I teaching to my students? And how am I teaching it? What do I do when I teach reading, when I teach writing? How do I assess them? Am I sure that they are reading comprehensively across all subjects? Do my students feel a sense of achievement? Are they happy? What kind of persona are they creating for themselves? So we can talk about the curriculum genre, register, sorry, and okay, now I'm just going to skip this for a while because I'm going to develop it more later. So regarding the questions that teachers should be asking themselves, are my students reading history, art, Spanish, math, biology at the literal, inferential, and interpretative level? It's something we should stop and ask ourselves. And if not, well, we should have an emergency intervention because that cannot be continued. So what are some of the solutions proposed by the Sydney School throughout since the 80s onwards? Work with knowledge genres. I identify the knowledge genres that students read and write in school. The curriculum genres for negotiating knowledge in the classroom. Realizations as discourse patterns. What are the realizations written and spoken in the classroom? What is the knowledge about language that we need to teach? Genre, discourse, grammar. And what is the knowledge about pedagogy? The theory and practice. And the proposal here is reading to learn. So, facing a situation of teaching, as I just demonstrated above, there are these solutions proposed by the Sydney School. So how was the first problem analyzed? Yes. So, well, let's recontextualize SFL theory. For what? For education purposes. How do we do this? How do we recontextualize language into from SFL into a more readable, understandable, recontextualized set of meanings for education? Well, from context to genre register, looking at function, stages, and phases. In text, looking at text from discourse perspective, looking at the ideation, elaboration, conjunction, and identification discourse systems. At the level of sentence, grammar, looking at syntax, tense, and punctuation. And at the level of word, looking at spelling and spelling rules. So let's also recontextualize our understanding of reading from a systemic point of view and from a top-down point of view. So where do we get where do we find interpretive meanings when we read a text? In the context. And in the context means in myself. When I read a text and I interpret the text, I use my reason and my feelings in a way, my subjectivity. When I try to understand a text at the context, at the level of where do I find hidden meanings? How can I solve an inference? Well, at the text level. Where do I find the literal meanings? The meanings that are easily identifiable in the sentence. And how do I find, how do I understand the text from bottom up? By decoding. So, analyzing the levels of comprehension help teachers to understand these linguistic processes more clearly. Also, complexifying the reading and writing task, because people think that reading and writing, or reading, maybe it's not complex. You just have to give the books to the kids, the students. Well, just read it, answer the questions, find the inference, just understand the text. But when we we show the complexity of the reading and writing task, we can understand much more how a text works. As you can see, so many layers, so many levels, from more abstract to more concrete. And so the requirements for fluent and comprehensive reading and writing, to read comprehensively, we need to recognize these levels and interpret these levels. And to write, we need to have these levels of purpose, topic, structure, phrases, meanings, the meanings of words at our disposal to choose from, to go and look at in the system and pick from here and from there, from these levels, to write a well-crafted text. But we need to do that simultaneously. So in this way, showing the complexity of the task, the reading and writing tasks, help us to read with comprehension and have choices at our disposal for writing. So the writing task was also analyzed, and they came up with the knowledge genres. So identify these families of genres for education. Text that their main purpose is to engage you into reading a recount, reading something, no complication, reading, sharing feelings, reading, judging behavior, informing text in science, in history, in math, plus following instructions somehow, and evaluating. Okay, and a different way of showing the knowledge genres, we have this way of another way of depicting this with the stages, purpose and stages. So, how reading to learn has evolved from the 80s, how this knowledge has been continuously recontextualized for what it is today. It was a curriculum genre before, right? This was the way for teaching the knowledge genres. This was the pedagogy. As you may know, okay, until they came to redesigning these curriculum genres and to reading to learn, which is a new generation of genre-based literacy, which incorporates the genre writing method and the types of reading genres researched by the Sydney School since the 80s. But the reading to learn methodology starts with scaffolding reading and guiding learners to use what they have learned from reading in their writing. So it starts from reading in the disciplines, reading the genres of the disciplines, and writing in the genres of the disciplines. And its main objective is democratizing the classroom, giving access to all kids. Yeah. So we can say that reading to learn is a curriculum genre, and curriculum genres are composed in a way of two registers, the pedagogic register and the curriculum register. Curriculum register composed of the knowledge genres and the values that are supposed to be acquiring in the school. Curriculum knowledge, specialized register and genres. The curricular values, and the pedagogic register, which is the pedagogic relations that are built in ourselves, in the students, when they are at school. What kind of relationships? What kind of identities? Identities of winner or loser? Me as a teacher, am I providing for the student to develop into a success spiral or a failure spiral, into inclusion or exclusion? The pedagogic activities, what are the learning tasks being used or being See, yeah, being used in the classroom. What are the learning activities? And what are the pedagogic modalities? So I'm going to focus a little bit on the learning activities. So this this learning cycle, prepare, focus, task, evaluate, and elaborate, happens throughout the different levels of teaching in the classroom. When I prepare my lesson plan, I consider what tasks I'm going to include and how I'm going to evaluate and elaborate. In the classroom, if I am going to teach reading in science, I prepare for reading my text. I get my students to focus visually on the text. Written, I get them to do the task, which could be highlighting a specific concept or highlighting a well-crafted metaphor. I give my feedback and then I elaborate. So these are the modalities used by the teacher and the classroom, teacher and students. And these are the activities. Being all so well prepared will help will help students to achieve comprehension. Hopefully, bringing these cycles, bringing students into these cycles of success and inclusion. Dar vuelta. Turn this around, because most students, the least engaged students are the majority. The middle engaged students are in the middle, but usually most involved students are the few. We want to turn that around. Okay, and going to reading to learn specifically. 3 levels of support. What is the main goal of the curriculum? Teach the context, disciplinary contents, and evaluate. And so we have these 3 levels, always coming down from the whole text to the passage to the sentence, from meaning to grammar. So what do we do? So this reading to learn shows in the outer circle how the teaching and learning cycle was included in the outer layer, specifically to teach writing. And here we have the detailed reading, which is guided reading for each sentence in a section. So we get a paragraph, and in that specific paragraph, a well-crafted orientation, a nice resolution, a description, a classification. We get students to isolate key concepts in the case of a scientific text. In the case of a narrative text, we get students to recognize literary devices, metaphors, similes. And with argumentative texts, we scaffold students to isolate, to recognize the thesis, the development, method of development. See? And what do we do in the joint rewriting? We get students to write a new text based on the paragraph. Oops. Yeah. In the case of a narrative, we scaffold students to write the same functional paragraph, for instance, an orientation, complication, or resolution, whatever it is that I'm been working with, but with different context. And in the case of a expository text, we get students to identify the key concepts, because the purpose is for, in that case, is to start to learn a scientific concept, for instance. If I'm teaching a year 4, year 3 students about the parts of a tree, I would get them to recognize the parts of a tree. So, and they will have to write a summary with the key concepts. And in individual rewriting, students will write a new text using the same model learned. For initial writing, we always go down. So let's not forget that we always start from preparing for reading the whole text. We go to the paragraph and we go to the sentence. And then we go to the words. And then we go to the syllables for initial writing. And then we go up and build up again the sentence, the paragraph. And after so many times of doing this cycle, we get students to write a little, a bigger text. Yeah. So how are these reading to learn strategies relate? How do they relate with the learning activities? With the prepare, task, and elaborate, which is the prepare, task, elaborate cycle of learning is the main engine, is the basis of reading to learn, because we prepare so well for students to do the task that they do it properly, they do it correctly. We evaluate, so we say, well done, perfect, congratulations. And we get students to be into this virtuous cycle of feeling fulfillment, feeling that they are happy, that they're getting it right. Therefore, the brain, the soul, everything opens up to new learning. And that's when the teacher comes and elaborates and teaches. So in a way, is the other way around of what you maybe know, what the constructivist, progressivist theories do it the other way around. Do not prepare the students, because then creativity will die. So this is the other way around. And so, for instance, in reading a whole text, what do I do in prepare? I review the whole text. I tell my students, this text is about a love story, and the main characters are, and I read the text aloud, and then I discuss further. With paragraph by paragraph reading, in detail reading, in paragraph by paragraph reading, I preview a paragraph, read it, highlight key information, whether it is a narrative text, literary patterns, whether it is a scientific text, key concepts, and so on. So these are the learning activities that occur when teaching specific parts of the reading to learn strategies. What is important here to keep in mind is that this is the other way around. I prepare them well. I get them to focus, as I said here, mira, here. I prepare my students well. I read to them. I get them to see what it is that I want them to, what it is that I want them to know, to learn. They highlight it. They recognize it physically. I evaluate. I say, well done. And then I elaborate orally. Yeah. Okay. I had a doubt, but no, I'm not wrong. Yeah. Okay, so again, the reading to learn strategies now, but with the genres across the curriculum. So when I'm teaching factual texts, what kind of strategies am I using? For factual text, then entonces I would be working with the main objective would be learn the curriculum genre. Then I go paragraph by paragraph, highlight and discuss key information and make notes. So my purpose here is to learn content disciplinary knowledge. I go into the detailed reading in order to understand in depth and more detail. Y voy always discussing in depth. Then I go to rewriting, making notes, and here I use the notes to write organized, coherent text. In the case of stories, what is the purpose of working with stories? Engage and interpret literature. Engage. Get to students to love reading. And get to students to become interpreters of literature. Criticize literature. So preparing, what do I do? Prepare and read the whole text or chapter and discuss themes and aesthetic literary aspects. Macro, micro. I get my students to recognize in detailed reading, recognize patterns of literary language. In rewriting, I get my students to use language from authors and use the same language patterns, but with new settings, new characters. Here I do brainstorm. So who are we going to write a story about? Where? So we discuss different settings, different characters, different complications, and we use these well-written models of stories. Different purpose with stories, you see? With arguments, what's the purpose with arguments? Is to read source text about issues. Get students to be critical, to defend a thesis, support a thesis with arguments, to be against or for a thesis. So in that situation, we copy the structure, we imitate the structure, and we use different theses, and so on. So different purposes, same strategies, these ones, but with different purposes for different genres. I hope I'm making myself clear.
Yes, very clear. Well done.
Good, thank you. Yeah. So, regarding assessment, you know, evaluation is the driving source of the pedagogic mechanism, according to Bernstein. So, what do we do when we assess writing? Again, top down, from abstract, from generic to specific, concrete here. It's very simple, very um, you must have seen some other criteria and rubrics which are so subjective, I think. They are like cohesion. Is this text cohesive? Sometimes, how would a teacher know, a primary teacher know what cohesion is? So that's why, as I mentioned before, um, uh, the 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 systemic the knowledge, the SFL knowledge, the Sydney School knowledge has been recontextualized into this. We have shown the complexity, and once understand the complexity of the reading and writing task, then we can tackle it. We are not afraid of it. And this shows complexity being exposed in a way. So context, we should make quick judgment, about this context criteria. Purpose. Does the text has the purpose? Yes or no? 0, 1, or 3? Or so, or half of the purpose? ¿Te fija? Yeah. Yeah, the stagings, feel, tenor, at the discourse level. This is cohesion. But this is very explicit, you see? And then we go to grammar, grammatical conventions, syntax, word order, punctuation. No, here we have punctuation. For example, here, do we have only subordination or so only coordinations? Are sentences linked only by coordination? Talking about taxis, parataxis? Or is it more evolved, more subordination? And graphic features, spelling, punctuation, and presentation. And here we have the levels. And this is how it is shown. This is the results of these criteria. We put them here. Student name. Yeah. Aquila. Aquila, yeah. Year 1, how did she did here? 3, perfect. Staging, no, here, pongamos 2. She's developing. Term 2, 3, and so on. And this, at the end of the day, becomes this. This is an example of results beginning literacy. Post results after 3 terms of reading to learn training program. 15% gap between top and bottom. Aquí, the gap without reading to learn has tripled. But after 3 months, only 3 months, 3 terms of reading to learn, this gap has halved. And most of the students are in the top range. And this is a pattern that occurs throughout in different countries that have used reading to learn. And also, we need to be careful in terms of objectivity. So that's why it's the same writing assessment criteria used throughout the world, the same correlation between reading to learn strategies and genres across the curriculum, the same table, so we can compare across different contexts. And for instance, in the stories, this is an example of these are some of the questions that the teacher would ask. Purpose: is the story appropriate? Does it have the appropriate stages? Are the phases used creatively to build problems and reactions? So here in the phases, when writing a story, the phases carry all the creativity. They are so much powerful. When I've shown this to teachers, they can't believe it. They say, "Oh, I didn't know how to get my students to be creative." But when you do the right scaffolding with preparing to read, detailed reading, and so you can start asking, "So what happened? What happened then? And how did the boy reacted? It reacted how? With his heart? Reacted physically? Passed out? Or it just physically went running?" So factual texts, which is, I remember that factual texts have a different purpose, is to learn disciplinary content. Sorry. Acá. How well does the writer understand and explain the topic? Is it objective? Because in science, if the student is writing a compositional report about first a classification report, for instance, macro genre, talking about different kinds of musical instruments, and then it narrows down into a compositional report, the parts, components of the guitar. So I need to evaluate if the tenor is right. Is the writing of this compositional report about the parts of the guitar objective? There's no space for subjectivity there. The guitar is what it is. It has what it has all over the world. You see? So objectivity should be there. You see? And yeah, what else? So these are examples of the questions that a teacher, in arguments, for instance, arguments. I ask myself when I'm correcting, you see, is the argument genre appropriate for the writer's purpose? Does it go for the appropriate stages? Thesis, context, argument 1, thesis and topic development. Argument 2, thesis development. Does it describe the issue, context, point of view coherently? Is it convincing? You see, here in tenor, we need more persuasion. We can be more subjective here. In conjunction, are the logical relations used to construct arguments with internal contrast, consequence and time? Does it have internal cohesion? Like my first argument, second argument. Once the reasons presented, how are they tracked? How is the reference working? Or do they get lost? You introduce them and then you don't come back. The logical relations. And just to wrap up, this presentation is inspired by a talk that David Rose gave many years ago in Santiago, I think. Now I am not very sure, but I have that presentation, and he was making the case on how linguistic knowledge can be recontextualized into pedagogic knowledge. And also, this presentation has been informed by this article, Linguistics and the Consumer, the Practice of Theory, by James Martin. Professor Martin was my supervisor, and I also worked with Professor Rose, and I learned so much from them, and I still do. I was reading this article today, and something else came up to my mind. It's incredible that you are always recontextualizing your knowledge within you as well, within oneself. So they started way back in the 80s, asking what kind of knowledge about language do teachers need? And that knowledge, what is the role of language in learning in schools? What is the role of language in learning in schools, in learning the disciplines? So they wanted to know what knowledge, what role. But what happened is that practicing teachers had no knowledge about language way back then. But what is interesting, that discussion is being held now in Chile, for instance. Universities, I am part of Por un Chile que lee, for a Chile that reads, which is private and public mesa de trabajo, working table, organization. And so we are wondering why our Chilean students do not understand what they read. We don't even talk about writing because we are not much into writing, even though we should, but even though it's declared in the curriculum, but that's another point. And universities are analyzing their curricula for preparing future teachers, and linguistics is not there. It's completely absent. And when it is, they only have, for instance, phonetics 1. Semester 2, they have syntax. Semester 3, discourse. So students at universities have they have a view, a not systemic view of language, a not holistic view of language. Therefore, they atomized. When you atomize language, you forget about meaning. And that's the problem. And so teachers, at the end of the day, they have no knowledge about language. So in this article, Martins described the success they had with the teaching and learning cycle, which is mostly based on scaffolding writing. So one of the things that he mentioned that in this article, that it is necessary to work towards an international consensus on the kinds of knowledge about language that it's relevant to language learning. Because like we have the International Declaration of Human Rights. Everybody knows that you have to respect human life, the right to education, the right to have food, home, etc. So this is what is the kind of knowledge about language that teachers need to have. So that's why he was proposing this international consensus. And also, he, in this book in which he reviewed the experience of the 80s, came up with the conclusion that the recontextualization of the two fields, education and linguistics, each by the other's practice, engender the success of this action research. In sum, our experience of getting people to consume linguistics shows that inclusive theory and practice involves a reciprocal recontextualization of one theory's practice by another's. The dialogue among functional linguists and educators I described above. The whole process he was describing about what happened in the 80s in Sydney. And the results of this dialogue have to themselves be recontextualized with respect to the practice of government, including politicians and bureaucrats, and the media, if meaningful social change is to be enacted. Keep it simple, make it work. He said this in relationship to how they could get the teaching and learning cycle and the genre-based pedagogy into the schools of education and to the Ministry of Education, the education departments. It's a very, very interesting article, which I advise you to read. So one of the closings, that Martin reached, keep it simple and make it work. And I think that reading to learn keeps it simple. I really do. Reading to learn isolated the complexity of language, the complexity of reading and writing, but once doing that, it allowed the teachers to see the components, so as to say, and in that scaffolded the teachers into recognizing which area should I be working with, and also the importance of working top down, from meaning to the letters. So, Martin, collaboration between linguists and educators improve literacy and teaching practices. There is a need for collaboration, an urgent need for collaboration to develop stronger links between schools of education and linguistics department are essential. And there is a paradox, because like doctors, future doctors need to have a sound knowledge of biology. It's the core discipline, biology, isn't it? Well, the core discipline of future teachers is linguistics, the knowledge of language, the quintessential knowledge that they need to have, the knowledge of language. What better than the knowledge of language based on SFL, on the genre-based pedagogy, which sees language as a system, as a function, language as a set of resources from which we choose different functions.
Sorry to interrupt, Ingrid.
Yeah.
Could you please jump to the conclusion, please?
Yeah, this is the conclusions. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very interesting. Well done. Thank you. Highly interesting. I sorry to have asked you for the conclusion because I wanted to devote a couple of minutes for a couple of questions
Of
because
course.
this is really a very interesting presentation, thought provoking. And you know that educational applications is one of the most widely used applications of SFL theory, and I believe that Martin and all you guys have done excellent job with all these implementation of SFL and Jora pedagogy, reading to learn, and I mean all these programs where we can see linguistics at work. And I particularly like this keep it simple, make it work. And I think that I believe that you guys are making it work. So maybe the challenge here is to make it extend to other areas of the world. I don't want to monopolize the floor, so I give the floor to a couple of questions. Very quick questions. Dr. Faisal, Malish, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I mostly like this comprehensive approach to education in the sense of democratizing the educational process, approaching a holistic, contextualized approach to language, and injecting some SFL constructs into curricular content. I also like this felicitous integration of learning styles. I think it wasn't actually announced, but the work model by Fleming, the visual, the auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic styles of learning. I think you have succeeded in combining all these learning styles into your model, which originally focuses on writing, but you managed to combine these four learning styles. Critical learning or critical thinking is also a very positive point, interpretation. However, I have a couple of brief questions concerning the balanced versus the integrative. What do you mean by balanced? Because in the literature, balanced is concerned with the allocation of teacher talking time, TTT, and student talking time. Student 30% and teachers 70%. Do you mean this? Another point is about the SFL, the genre terminology, field tenor mode. I only noticed that in your assessment criteria and not in the actual design of the classroom materials. I mean, unless I haven't actually noticed that in your presentation. I like the assessment grid and diagrams. I mean, they are fascinating. They are very comprehensive. But to what extent do they actually respond or maybe agree with your principle of keep it simple, make it work? Have you actually tested the feasibility of the model? Because there are many complex rubrics. They are very interesting, but they are very complex. When you tested these criteria, genre, are they separate rubrics, or I mean, are they marked separately, or is there a holistic marking? Thank you very much. I think I have a lot of comments, but this is the gist of my comments and questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Faisal. Ingrid, could you respond or just?
Yes.
Yes, please, thank you. Could you stop sharing so that we see you on the screen? Just stop sharing, please.
Stop sharing. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Yeah. So I need to see though. Yeah. What do I mean by balanced approach? This balanced approach is supposed to include phonic activities with whole language. This is what it's meant. These curriculum genres that I showed, what was happening, the problem is that teachers used this balanced approach, this phonics and whole. But phonics worries about the syllable, and whole language worries about the word. So they do not reach the text. They do not reach meaning. They do not reach function. Therefore, it is a problem. It's causing kids not to understand reading, what they read. It takes too much to reach to the text, to the discourse. They don't have models to write. That's what it's meant by balanced approach. And in this presentation was considered a problem. And the solution being the whole recontextualization of the teaching and learning cycle into what nowadays it's called reading to learn. Yes, that's one thing. And the other question, I hope I have answered correctly. The other was the writing assessment criteria. Claro, it's for a first a teacher who is not who has not is not familiar with SFL. Of course, it may be difficult to apply. But this writing assessment criteria, it's supposed to be applied after future teachers have taken a course on SFL and reading to learn. So they have to be familiarized with a view of language, as a semiotic resource, as a semiotic functional and a resource. And then they will see clearly as water what it means to analyze a text in terms of field, tenor, mode, or the discourses systems. As in everything, I mean, you need to know your grammar in order to write. As a teacher, you need to know grammar, know conjunctions, know what are the resources at your disposal for writing, for reading. But teachers don't know how to teach inference, for example. They don't have a clue. It's very difficult for them how to teach students to recognize an inference in a text. And inferences are in a paragraph, can be in a paragraph by bridging one concept to the other. So if you know language, you can teach students you can make the inference explicit. But I'm amazed that, for instance, teachers do not know how to teach inference. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So are you inferring here that we need a lot of teacher training? I guess this is one of the messages that the Reading to Learn program is centered about. It's about recontextualization, teacher training. So I think that the problem with students comes first from the problem of teachers and first in being trained in linguistics. Of course, I mean, I totally agree with you that we cannot have a teacher without knowledge of language, not only knowledge of language, but knowledge of linguistics in how to approach teaching the linguistic skill if they are not skilled in the theory. So that's something I think we agree upon. So I think a major challenge is about teacher training, and you seem to support this argument, don't you?
Yes.
Exactly.
I mean, Aquila, the thing is that we could be asking ourselves, in my university, what is the relationship that my faculty, arts, humanities, has with the education department? Do we talk? Do we have a dialogue? what we can just look at the Maya, the curriculum, the
Yes.
teacher formation, teacher,
Meaning.
¿cómo se llama? De la Maya, el curriculum that teachers follow, semester 1, semester 2, yeah, program, yeah. Look at it, and does it have linguistics, or does it have isolated phonics and then isolated syntax? No, this is not helpful.
Exactly, yes. I totally agree. We have another question in the chat. You can read it. So, from a participant, thank you so much. This is really interesting. But considering the drastic changes happening now in writing in general, don't you think that using SFL in educational settings reduces language to a deterministic process rather than a creative and evolving one? That's the first part of the question. Also, what about the possible result of this standardization imposes hegemonic academic discourses and structures? I mean, here the idea of modeling. I mean, simple, from whose perspective and work for whom. So that's a sort of thought-provoking questions.
Good question.
Yeah, interesting question. And I think Martin himself is a bit concerned about this normative approach and this modeling rather than creative way of teaching. So, what would you respond to our dear participant here? I guess this is me.
Acá está. I remember because I took Jim's courses, register and genre course, and other one that I don't remember. But he always says you need to spoof the genre. I will write it down here. Spoof the genre.
Yes.
And that means that, y aquí I'm reading it now here in the article about consumer, linguistics and the consumer. Dice, our experience is that the more explicitly discourses are presented to such disadvantaged groups, and contextualized with respect to their social function, the more opportunity marginalized students have to take them or leave them as they choose. And if they take them, to take them up in ways that suit their interests, including renovations where required.
Mhm.
So we have access to the canon, don't we?
Yes.
We have read the canon. We have watched in the Vatican, at the Louvre. We have watched the canon. We have touched the sculptures of the beauty. Why cannot disadvantaged students have access to this? You can call them maybe discourses of power.
Mhm.
Of course, they are discourses of power. Shouldn't they be unable to read them? I'm amazed. I mean, that would be a human. We would be violating a human right if me as a responsible educator do not allow my students to have access to these courses of power, and they can spoof the genre. They can do whatever they want. They can destroy it and criticize it.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree. Yes. So, in fact, it's a job of the teacher to keep this balance between keeping the critical eye. Of course, it's a discourse of power, and I think this is unavoidable. But at least we can equip our students with this critical eye. So not only consume, but also criticize, evaluate what they read. And I totally agree with you. But again, here, I think that it requires a lot of effort on both the teacher and the institution, I mean, on the curriculum designer. Thank you. I hope Minun Ingrid has answered your question. We don't have any more questions, so time to close the seminar. So thank you again, Ingrid Westhoff. Thank you, Louise Mycock, our dear invited speakers for today's seminar. That was really very interesting. We had two interesting talks in two different directions. So one in the language description, one in the educational application, both very interesting and highly informative. Thank you again for accepting your invitation. Thank you to all participants for their engagement and for their interesting questions. And have a nice weekend, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Kila, Nazreen.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Bye, Luis.